Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're not just staring at a spreadsheet of government spending, we're actually decoding a geopolitical blueprint. We're unpacking India's defense budget for 2025-26. If you really want to understand where a nation is heading, don't just listen to the speeches, look at where it puts its money. This explainer is your premium strategic briefing. We're going to take all that complex fiscal data and transform it into clear, actionable insights about national security and tech evolution. Let's get right into it. So imagine a country that shares some of the most complex, highly contested borders on the planet. Literally, every single day, it requires massive resources just to keep the troops ready and the borders secure. But at the exact same time, the whole nature of warfare is fundamentally shifting. We're talking artificial intelligence, cyber warfare, space defense. So here is the real-world problem India is facing right now. How on earth do you pay to secure those physical borders today while also funding a massive transition to a futuristic, high-tech military? Okay, let's dive into this. To answer that question, we really need to grasp the sheer scale of the commitment here. Take a look at this number, 6.81 lakh crore. That is the total allocation for the Ministry of Defense. To put that massive figure into perspective, it represents 13.45% of the entire union budget. It's almost 2% of India's total GDP. It is an absolute record allocation, and it shows a really unyielding commitment to national security and this broader vision of a developed India by 2047. But, a giant number alone doesn't actually tell the whole story. We need to look at the big picture first. Check out how this pie is sliced. You've got revenue expenditure sitting at 3.11 lakh crore. That's your day-to-day sustenance, salaries, fuel, immediate operational costs. Then you've got defense pensions taking up 1.61 lakh crore. And that leaves capital allocation, which is the money actually used to buy new weapons and build for the future, at 1.80 lakh crore. Right off the bat, you can spot the tension here. The vast majority of the budget is completely absorbed by the massive costs of just sustaining a large standing force today, which leaves a smaller, highly contested slice for those crucial future investments. So, let's focus on that future-facing slice. Phase 1. Capital acquisition and the shield of self-reliance. For decades, India heavily relied on importing its weapons, and honestly, that created an immense strategic vulnerability. And this brilliantly illustrates the evolution from that historic problem to a massive systemic reform. On one side, you have traditional procurement, vulnerable supply chains, heavy reliance on foreign imports. On the other side, the Atmanirbhar strategy. The government is actively restricting itself, walling off an unprecedented 75% of the modernization budget strictly for domestic industries. Because let's face it, you can't be a truly sovereign global power if you're relying on other nations for your armor. Now, we don't want to leave that 75% as just some abstract concept. It translates to exactly 1.12 lakh crore rupees. This huge sum is explicitly reserved for Indian industries. It's an unmistakable signal to the market. Basically, the government is guaranteeing demand so that Indian companies can actually feel confident investing in the heavy manufacturing required to build long-term technological independence. So, how is this actually playing out on the ground? Well, out of that domestic allocation, nearly 28,000 crore rupees is carved out specifically for the private sector. And this isn't just about feeding the big state-owned enterprises. It's about forcing agile MSMEs and startups right into the defense ecosystem. We are talking about funding the homegrown development of strategic projects, think indigenous fighter jets, submarines, and unmanned combat aerial vehicles. The impact here is huge. It bolsters the national defense industrial base, it cuts down foreign dependency, and it creates high-tech jobs right at home. Let's shift gears a bit. Phase 2, future innovation and securing the frontier. Now, what's really interesting here is that while heavy hardware is absolutely critical, modern conflicts are increasingly being decided by deep tech and rapid border mobility. We're seeing a real narrative shift from traditional steel to silicon, and from the heartland out to the very edges of the borders and coastlines. Look at the trajectory of the Indian Coast Guard. 9,676.70 crore might seem a bit small compared to the Army's budget, but look at the trend. It represents a 26.5% overall increase and a staggering 43% boost specifically in their capital budget. This money is heavily targeted for acquiring advanced light helicopters, fast patrol vessels, and interceptor boats. It shows a highly focused, problem-solving approach to really scaling up coastal security and anti-smuggling ops. Moving from the coasts up to the mountains, we see some real systems thinking in action with the Border Roads Organization, or BRO. With a capital allocation of over 7,146 crore rupees, the BRO is rapidly developing strategic infrastructure. And we aren't just looking at regular roads here. We're talking about vital strategic connectivity arteries in places like Arunachal Pradesh, Jammu and Kashmir, and Rajasthan. Plus, the secondary impact of this is profound. These projects have employed 70,000 local youths, which beautifully intertwines national security directly with regional socioeconomic development. But listen, the most crucial frontier right now isn't geographical at all, it's technological. Over 26,800 crore rupees has been directed to the DRDO, aiming straight at next-generation warfare. We're talking artificial intelligence, hypersonic weapons, cyber warfare, and space defense capabilities. On top of that, nearly 450 crore rupees is being funneled into the IDEX and ADIDI programs. This is exactly how the government is integrating those fast-moving private sector startups into what has traditionally been a pretty slow defense ecosystem. It ensures a much faster development cycle for indigenous tech. All right, moving on to Phase 3, sustaining the force and honoring veterans. Because let's be real, all the AI and hypersonic missiles in the world mean absolutely nothing without the people operating them. Think of this as a 3-step cycle of human capital investment. Step 1, operational readiness. That 3.11 lakh crore we mentioned ensures active personnel are paid, fed, and supplied with fuel and ordnance ready for immediate deployment. Step 2, financial security. 1.61 lakh crore honors the social contract with over 34 lakh ex-servicemen, ensuring the timely implementation of the One Rank One pension scheme, including its 3rd revision. And Step 3, healthcare. Over 8,300 crore goes to expand world-class ECHS polyclinics right across India. This is definitely not just administrative overhead, folks. It is a critical, absolute necessity to secure those who secure the nation. Now let's get analytical. Phase 4, critical analysis and the budget realities. A true strategic briefing doesn't just hype up the achievements, it rigorously examines the bottlenecks. When you weigh India's vast geopolitical ambitions against its systemic realities, a pretty stark picture emerges. The ambition, of course, is technological superiority and rapid modernization. But the bottleneck? That capital allocation, the actual money used for modernization, is limited to just over 26% of the total budget. Furthermore, bureaucratic hurdles in procurement often lead to frustrating delays and, ironically, completely unused budgets. We are racing toward the future, but our bureaucratic engine is kind of still stuck in first gear. To resolve this, policy analysts point to a very clear future way forward. First up, multi-year financial planning. Instead of these unpredictable annual budgets, the military really needs rolling 5-year spending commitments. Second, we've got to ruthlessly optimize the procurement process to cut through that red tape. Third, India's R&D spending still lags behind the major global powers, so this needs a major structural boost. And finally, strict accountability measures and transparent tracking systems have to be put in place to ensure that not a single rupee of that precious capital expenditure goes unutilized. Let's bring it all together. Phase 5, the master revision. To lock the strategic blueprint in your mind, here are your 5 crucial takeaways. 1. The scale is massive, 6.81 lakh crore, commanding 13.45% of the union budget. 2. The shield of self-reliance, 75% of capital procurement is walled off for domestic industry. 3. Honoring the human element, 1.61 lakh crore is dedicated to pensions and OROP for 34 lakh veterans. 4. The frontier of warfare. We're seeing a strong targeted push into deep tech, AI, and space via the DRDO and IDEX. And 5, the lingering challenge. There is an absolute necessity for structural procurement reforms to make sure these funds are fully and efficiently utilized. I want to leave you with a final analytical question to chew on. As the whole nature of global conflict evolves at breakneck speed, will these incremental budget upgrades be enough? Or does India need a radical, fundamental technological shift to secure true strategic autonomy in the decades to come? It's a complex puzzle, and the numbers we've decoded today, well, they're really just the opening move. Keep analyzing, keep questioning, and keep learning. Catch you next time.